People on this. Hello, everybody. Let me get my view to gallery.
Hi, Professor.
Hey, Rosemary.
Hello.
Hey, Lorraine.
How are you?
I'm good today. How about you?
I'm awesome.
Hi, Professor. This is Erica. I don't understand why I keep saying my daughter's name.
Oh, do you know how to change it?
No, I created a new Zoom with my name, but when I connect it to you, it just keeps coming here.
So one of the ways you could do it is if you go to participants and you have the list.
Participant?
Yeah. And then you see your daughter's name. Underneath the more, there should be something that says rename.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Professor, I can't get my camera on.
Oh, okay.
You hear, Professor?
I heard you, Cesar. Right. Was it Cesar who said it or was it Gregory?
Cesar.
Oh, okay.
This is Gregory. Hello, Professor. Hello, everyone.
All right, just letting a few more people in as they approach. But I'd like we can get started. I'll just keep an eye on the waiting room to make sure I can let everybody else in. So welcome back.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Johanny. So again, I encourage you to open your cameras if you can, so we can see each other. If you like, I invite you to do that. And we're going to get started. So just in case, is there anybody here who was not here on Wednesday? Just, you had to use a feature down at that, the reactions, just raise your hand if you were not here Wednesday. Everybody here was here Wednesday. Great, cool, great. Well, oh, Barbie. So Barbie, you were not here Wednesday. Okay. Excuse me. Yeah. Well, welcome Barbie to the class. And so today I'm gonna speak just a little bit about the syllabus. I'm gonna take a look at it. I'm assuming everybody was able to access it. It's important that you're able to do it. I'm gonna share my screen and show you how, so in case you haven't, but you should. but I've also sent it in an email. You know, I mean, it may be OD, but I'd rather you have it than not have it. Okay. So, so let's take a look at that. And I'm going to share screen. Great. And then here we go. So this is my Blackboard when I'm signed in. I find our class. So you should be able to find your class. And then our class is here for me. And I'm going to open up the class. And then here, there are the tabs on the left. So syllabus is over here. I'm going to click the syllabus. And then if you click the syllabus, it should open up or download into your computer as it did to mine. And then I'm going to open it. That's right. So just, I went over this last class. So my contact info is on the page. The Zoom link is here as well. I think I just sent it out again. And then there's a lot of the stuff about course description and sequence and all these things. There's certain things on the syllabus that we have to put on legally. Our syllabi keep getting bigger and bigger. The synchronous statement about coming to class, but we went over a lot of these things. The percentages of the grades, you know, the grading system. So I talked a lot about these things in the first class. And I had asked you to take a look at it. At the end of this little section, I'm going to ask if people have any questions. You know, it talks about the research project, it talks about participation, but, you know, don't worry about any of the final exam. We will, you know, all those things will be built into it, into the class. So those questions hopefully will be answered as we go along. Due dates for the essays, you know, all the due dates, you know, in one spot on the syllabus. This might change, but as of now, these are the dates for everything. And then I'm going to stop here a little bit and just talk about some of the course ground rules. And we will be speaking about literature, about art, about the things that we read, about poems, about that. So, so I just want to take a little bit of a pause in this section. The course ground rules are important because I think when whether in the classroom or whether we are online together, it's important to just to acknowledge them. So we have, I put the first thing, respect reading and writing deadlines. I mean, it's important to, I mean, you know, professors can make up rules and say, these are the rules of the class, but they're not, you know, I can tell you, they're not, for me, they're not rules that I'm arbitrarily making. I mean, the idea of this class is that, you know, every session builds on the other, that there's information that's being shared in the synchronous, otherwise it would be an asynchronous class and I just upload a bunch of stuff to Blackboard for you to read. So it's synchronous. So I invite you to take advantage of the synchronous opportunity of us being together in real time by doing the reading and writing assignments. Because if you do the reading, then you'll know what we're talking about. If you don't do the reading, you're going to be sitting there like listening to everybody else, but not really being able to absorb it and not getting the full benefit for it. Courteous classroom behavior, that means, you know, we're going to be respectful of each other. I have my cell phone next to me, but it's on silent so that you know, that I won't have any interruptions while I'm teaching. So I ask you to do the same. Certainly do not sleep, even if you're off camera, because if you sleep, you're not here. You're not taking advantage of it. And being respectful is important to a successful class. And I get to, as professor, get to decide what is being respectful. So it's difficult on Zoom because sometimes when we're speaking, to unmute and to speak and stuff like that, there's a rhythm to it. But just keep in mind, if someone's speaking, you're ready to speak, you can use the raise your hand feature. There's different things you can do to communicate with me that that will create an environment where we can hear each other. I stop and pause in the next bullet point that says we adhere to the college's commitment to understanding and appreciating diversity and pluralism. Right? So your professor, I have zero tolerance for racism, for sexism, homophobia, and anti-Semitism, or any other language of hate. By using those words as acts against others, you are participating in harassment, which is an offense and is also disruptive, which will result in me asking you to leave the room. In Zoom, it's weird. I could just, you know, take you out. But although the work, and I stop because sometimes we may read something that might have language that is racist or sexist or homophobic. or anti-Semitic, but it's different than us using that language against each other. We're using it in the classroom as a way to explore it, and we have time to ask questions. I normally ask all of you to give me definitions of these things, but in the essence of moving forward, I'm going to give them to you and explain. But either way, whether it's sexism, racism, homophobia, or anti-Semitism, they're all about language and activity that is hateful or hurtful toward people. Because in terms of race, it's because of the color of their skin. In terms of sexism, it's because of their gender, right? In terms of homophobia, it's because of their sexual orientation, whether they're lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. And in terms of anti-Semitism, sometimes students don't know what that is. They haven't heard that. You may have heard the first three terms with racism, sexism, and homophobia, but sometimes not necessarily anti-Semitism. But anti-Semitism specifically, it's about hate language and hate activities, violence toward people because of their Jewish belief and Jewish faith. And I expand that definition, not anti-Semitism, but the idea around it is because many people sometimes experience hate or hateful actions and violence because of their religious beliefs. So it's not only Jewish, but also Muslim in this country, particularly in the last 20 years with after 9/11. And also historically, Christians were persecuted. There's the Spanish Inquisition. There's lots of historical moments where people were killed or treated badly or hatefully because of their religious beliefs. So I pause for that because we need to create space in this classroom for us to be able to talk about the things that we need to talk about, but not use language or activity that is hurtful or hateful toward one another. So any questions before I go on about what I just talked about in terms of racism, sexism, homophobia, and anti-Semitism? You can unmute or we could use the chat.
No.
Okay. All right, so then the rest of it is just assuming the responsibility of the work that you miss, right? So we put on the syllabus. The classes are recorded. Usually I'll create a folder so that you can go back and check out the classes that we have in case there's something that I did in class that you particularly want to remember. And then also I should say that for this class that you should have a laptop or tablet or something that you could write with, because like today we will see that they will, we're going to do something today where I'm going to ask you to write stuff down, but I'm going to go over that later on. So you could, so you should have something to write with for class, and not paper and pen because you have to be able to upload it at the end of class. So this class is being recorded. So you could, if you need another recording of it, just let me know if you want to record it on your own.
Hi, Professor.
Hello. Who's speaking?
How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
It's me, Madeline Antigua. I'm sorry. I'm not late. I'm trying to log in since 5:30 in my computer and it doesn't let me, to log in. But now I did it on my phone and it works.
Right.
So I don't know what's the problem with my computer. I don't know.
I think the links are different. The links on Blackboard are different. The same thing happened to me. It kept me in a waiting room.
It happened
So you have
to me.
to use, yeah,
So
you have
if you
to
see
use
my
the
computer
original
still
one.
waiting, so you let me, I don't know what to do.
So if
I don't
you're
want to
on
use the phone.
Blackboard, you should use the first link that he posted.
Yeah, that's what I did. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, because he posted a new one today, and that one didn't work for me. It had
Oh,
me
the
like
first...
Yes, the original one, the one all the way in the bottom. I'm sorry, Professor. I had the same problem today.
So, okay, then maybe I posted the wrong link. When you mean the announcement? The announcement I said when classes started.
Yes. Yeah, and
I'll
exactly.
check that. I'll check it.
So do you use the old link, right? That's what you said.
Use the old link. Yeah, I'll send another email.
All right, let me try it again. Sorry guys for interrupting.
It's okay.
Thank you.
But it should be the same link for the whole semester. Okay. So, I mean, I shouldn't be late to class. As you know, last time when I sent an email, some of you got it. So normally I will communicate with you if there's any issues. Then the rest of the syllabus really talks about academic integrity, and it speaks about plagiarism. And I'll just speak a little bit about that because we'll speak some more later on about it. That here we go. That you know, this is plagiarism is when you're copying somebody else's work and trying to pass it off as your own. That's a simple definition. So you should never do that. I'll tell you, never do that. There's if you want to quote somebody, there's a way to quote them and give them credit. There's a way to paraphrase. There's different ways to work with ideas, but to try to pass off someone else's paper, idea, section, a paragraph as your own is just don't do it. I mean, if I find plagiarism, unfortunately, I have to bring it to your attention, and then I have to fill a report and I have to put it in our department, and and you may fail that assignment. And then if that's the only report, then hopefully that will be it. But if I happen to submit a report and when they go to file it, they see other plagiarism reports, they bring it to the Office of Academic Affairs, and then there could be a hearing, there could be expulsion. They take it very seriously. So I'm just telling you now, with my straight face, don't do it. But seriously, don't do it. I mean, and in a way, because you rob yourself, right? The idea of being in this class, the whole idea of writing an essay is not just this exercise in writing, right? It's also an exercise of thinking, exercise of organizing your thoughts, exercising of self-expression, and that's something that we all want to continuously improve upon. So we'll talk more about that, but also there's the ADA statement in terms of Americans with disabilities. So if any of you are experiencing disability, and sometimes some disabilities are not visible, you know, you can speak to me, but you can speak to the ADA office of the Accessibility Resource Center, and they can help with any accommodations for that. And it's just important for you to know also, because when you're in live classes, in-person classes, because sometimes something might be as simple as, instead of when we're doing an in-class essay, I've had students that you know, have some diagnosed form of anxiety, and so for them to work in a timed period within a room, it's just not the best condition for them to do their best. So they might go to a different room the day of the exam, and they have more time to work on it. I share the writing centers opening as well. I share that, and I share all these things because basically Ostos has a lot of opportunities and services for you to try to do the best you can while you're here with us. So we want to do that. So there's counseling, there's the academic learning center where you can get tutoring. There's One Stop where you can get services, and I mentioned the Accessibility Resource Center. And then the big part of the essay of the syllabus is this section where we're going through day by day the different aspects of the class. So so I'm going to pause and see if people have, and stop sharing my screen. Let's see if folks have any questions on the syllabus. Okay, I'll take the silence as no. Okay.
No.
So as you saw me go into Blackboard to get the syllabus in there's two sections I mentioned in last class. The course content is where I upload. Right now there's a poetry packet. Later when we do fiction, that'll be up there. Later on when we do theater, it'll be up on there. That's where you get your information. The discussion section is where you will upload your assignments. So I'm going to go to that for a minute now because we're going to use something today. So let's just go here. No. Okay. So here, this course content, I'll just click it so we can look at it. The poetry is the only packet there. If you click it open, there's the elements of poetry, which is what I had asked you to read a little bit from. And then there's the discussion section, which here is where you upload assignments. So today is the 30th. And so after the end of class, I'm going to ask you to upload your poetry reflections. So I'm going to stop sharing a moment. And I'm going to ask you to hold your horses 1 second. I'll be right. Let's see. So just, I'm going to ask you to have something that you could write with, right? So something either on the computer, something you can upload to the class. At the end of class, you can upload what we're going to do. So the first section that we're going to work on.
I'm sorry, Professor. I have a question. How long after are we able to upload?
It would be great if, what time is it? I mean, usually whatever you write, don't worry too much about, it's just write your reflection, but usually as soon as when the class is done, you know, maybe if we have to do it right after class, but if you need more time, like you have to run off and, you know, have dinner or somebody, just as long as you do it by midnight, how's that?
Okay,
By
perfect.
midnight.
Thank you, Professor. That
Okay.
sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's okay if we write it down on paper and then we put it, you know, we can type it in after, just because that's how I process. Okay.
Me too. Me too.
Okay. All
That's
right,
fine.
great. And I
Thank
saw
you.
that Erica had a pad and paper in front of her, so it's like, all right, so let's make that deal together. If those of you, you could, by at least by midnight, the day of the thing when assignment needs to happen, so you could translate it.
Thank you.
So I'm good with that. All right, so we're gonna do basically an exercise that I call initial response, right? An initial response means like, what is your first response to it, right? So the first section we're going to read is poetry. The first section, so for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be exploring poems, right? And so, like I said, may have said in the first day of class, poetry, you know, one of the things is that it deals with the human experience, right? The human emotion, right? The human thought process. Poems could be, they don't necessarily have to tell a story, right? Poems could just be to evoke a feeling, right? Maybe evoke a thought and make you think about something, right? Have some kind of mental connection, maybe an emotional connection, maybe even even a spiritual one if you want to, right? That it could have any of those kinds of responses. And so what we're gonna do is just a simple exercise as an introduction to it. I'm gonna read a poem once, and I want you all just to use your ears, right? Don't write anything. I'm gonna read it once. Then I'm going to read the same poem a second time. After I read it the second time, write down anything, any response. It could be what you thought the poem is about. It could be anything that it reminds you of. It could be that you heard the word dog or the word cat in it, and you know what a dog and a cat is, and that's all you got. That's good. Or it could be like, I did not understand a single thing about this poem. That's a valid answer. Okay, so I'm going to read a poem once, I'm going to read it a second time, and then I'm going to ask you that after the second time I read it, you write down whatever response you have to it, okay? So this is the first poem. The first poem, and I'll do like a mini introduction about the writers, and then I'll read the poem. The first poem is called The Queen, and it's by a poet named Pablo Neruda. And Pablo Neruda is a poet that was born in Chile, which is a country in South America. It's a Spanish-speaking country in South America, and he's known as a very political poet. He's even was kicked out, exiled from his country because of the politics inside of his poems. But Pablo Neruda also is one of the most translated poets in the world. His poems are translated into hundreds of languages and are taught in syllabi all around the world. And when you go to Ostos, and you go to the big building, the C building, and there's the atrium with all the flags. If you go to the front of it, where they have the chairs on the different floors for students to chill or hang out, except for the third floor where there's a cafeteria, you look up on the wall near the windows, and there's a big banner hanging, and that's an image of Pablo Neruda. So the next time you go there, not only hopefully the name will be familiar, but you will have experienced at least one poem. So the other thing that Pablo Neruda is known for is for love poems. So it's interesting to be very political and also have a romantic side, love poems. So the poem that I'm going to share with you today is called The Queen. So remember, I'm going to read it once, then I'm going to pause for a moment, and then I'm going to read it a second time. Then after the second time, write down any thoughts. And even if you want to start writing them after I did the first one, refrain, okay? And just hear it a second time, okay? This one is called The Queen by Pablo Neruda. I have named you queen. There are taller ones than you, taller. There are purer ones than you, purer. There are lovelier than you, lovelier. But you are the queen. When you go through the streets, no one recognizes you. No one sees your crystal crown. No one looks at the carpet of red gold that you tread as you pass, the non-existent carpet. And when you appear, all the rivers sound in my body. Bells shake the sky, and a hymn fills the world. Only you and I, my love. This is one. I'm going to read the poem again. Queen by Pablo Neruda. I have named you queen. There are taller ones than you, taller. There are purer ones than you, purer. There are lovelier than you, lovelier. But you are the queen. When you go through the streets, no one recognizes you. No one sees your crystal crown. No one looks at the carpet of red gold that you tread as you pass, the non-existent carpet. And when you appear, all the rivers sound in my body. Bells shake the sky, and a hymn fills the world. Only you and I, only you and I, my love. Listen. Okay. Write down any thoughts, reflections. Okay, and finish your thoughts. Would anybody like to share? Beginners? Okay, Johnny.
I believe that this is the way that he sees her as the queen. She's not really a queen, but to his eyes, that's the way he sees her, very highly. Nobody else can see that, but he does. Nobody can see your crown. Nobody can see the rug, but to him and her, like, she's someone special.
I
Great.
agree.
Malin agrees.
Yes, definitely.
Great, thank you. All right, Shakwana. So your hand up.
Okay. Okay, so I pretty much said the same thing. I think the kind of speaks at volumes of also like women empowerment and also like a man having respect for his woman, more or less, or a woman in his life, whichever one. And I also think it shows that he pretty much appreciates her flaws, everything about her, and he has a form of respect for her, more or less.
Mhm. Great, thanks, Shakwana. Adama, you have your hand up?
Yes. I agree with her, but we can add that the poem is a lyric poem, like he described his feeling when he saw her, and he's using rhythm, the repetitive ending on the sentences. But I think what makes that romantic poem. Yeah, notice that.
Excellent.
I'm not good in poetry.
Well, I think that was a pretty good. You're getting a lot of nods. I don't know if you can see all of us. Your classmates are nodding along with you. So I know Cesar has their hand up and Mabel. So Cesar. Oh, I'm sorry, Greg. Did you have your hand up before? Okay, so let's do it that way. Cesar, Mabel, Greg.
I'll put like like he's looking at all her flaw, like she's not perfect or whatever, but in his eyes she's everything. Like he chose her to be his queen.
Yes. Right. Mabel, right? Not Mabel, Mabel. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so I think that when you read it the first time, what got my attention the most was the repetition at the beginning of the poem, because I feel like it gave the way that he was expressed, like it gave it more emphasis. And then I really like the part where he says, and when you appear, all the rivers sound in my body. Like nobody has rivers in their body, but the way he's describing is like so profound. You know, like usually people say, oh, I got butterflies in my stomach, but he's talking about like everything's moving, the fluids, the sky. So definitely a romantic poem. It was really, yes, intriguing. How he praises his queen.
Yeah.
Touching.
Yeah.
Greg?
Yeah, when I listened to this poem, it was about, you know, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. It's not about beauty that culture or society sees. You know, you see all these things on TV, all these glamour people and all made up and stuff like that. You know, the first thing that came to mind was beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. You know, he sees the beauty that only oneself could see, and that's a beauty within themselves. You know, and I love it how he describes her as a queen, because, you know, and it's not about that queens are all beautiful, they're not, but the image of a queen, you know, the glamour and the richness, and people, you know, will look at the queen like, you know, like she's God and stuff like that. And this is how he sees this girl, you know, in his eyes.
Wonderful, yeah. Anybody else? Well, you hit a lot of the points on the poem. You were able to look at it. There, you could say it from the perspective of, well, first of all, what you got from it, right? And I think there seems to be a lot of consensus that this person is talking about an object of admiration, an object of love, somebody that they look at. You know, the idea of the eye, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. We've heard that phrase before. That's considered a theme. That's a theme inside of this poem. Like it's one of the ideas that is happening inside of the poem, right? You also talked about, you got the idea that it's somebody, that there's some great love that is being professed or seen, right? You also picked up on a technique that Neruda is using in the poem, and one of the techniques is repetition, right? And Mabel talked about that one of the things that repetition did was emphasize it. And I forget, somebody mentioned it earlier, that they saw the repetition at the end, right? Only you and I, my love, right? And in the beginning, there's different kinds of repetition, right? They're taller than you, taller, purer than you, purer, right? Lovelier, lovelier, right? And even later on, he goes, no one sees, no one sees, no one sees, right? This idea of repetition that is happening throughout the whole poem, right? So there's a lot of different ways we can look at a poem, right? And we could examine it and experience it. So, so what I did was you just heard it twice. I mean, this is in your poetry packet. I'm not asking you to look at it right now, right? But I am going to look at it now. I'm going to share it on the screen so we could see it on the page, right? And also be mindful of how I read it, right? Because we're going to look at line breaks that Neruda has that I did not. I continued on the next line. I didn't stop in the line breaks. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to look at the poem. And then we're going to look at it because if you are writing an essay, right, on this poem, which you could write a whole essay on this poem, right, that one of the things you would need to do is the next level question I would ask you is to say, like, how do you know that it's about that beauty's in the eye of the beholder? You know, how do you know that, right? And so then that would mean that you would look at the poem and say, well, when the poet writes this line or these lines, that's what this makes me think. Or if I say, how do you know that someone said that maybe they're not the most beautiful person in the world, that they're not the most, you know, but into their eyes they are. Like, how do you know that, right? And so for you to be able to look at the text, to look at the poem and be able to say, yeah, these lines, when I read these lines, that's what makes me think it, right? So let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at how it looks on the page. Share my screen. Where do I have it at? Figure out how to make this not block everything so that I. Okay, so here's what it looks like in your poetry packet, right? Let me move this again. Okay, then you're gonna stay here. Oh, no, there we go.
It's in Spanish as well.
Okay, and here it is. I have named you queen. First line, right? Not the world, not something. I, one person, names you queen. And then here's a repetition. There are taller ones than you, taller. There are purer ones than you, purer. There are lovelier than you, lovelier. Right? So this is this. There are those who may be taller, who may be more pure, who may be more lovely, you know, and does that repetition, right? And it's almost like a repetition, but it's almost like an echo or a whisper, right? Like somebody repeats something. And it says, but you are queen, right? So it doesn't matter what there are others, you are the queen. And then you all pick this up pretty wonderfully, right? When you go through the streets, no one recognizes you, right? And is it that they don't recognize her, that they don't see her? Like, of course they probably see a person, but what does the poet see?
The queen.
A queen. Like, no one sees you, but I do, like that. No one sees your crystal crown. No one sees your crystal crown. Why do you think they use the word crystal crown? Is the person really wearing a crown?
Maybe only he could see it.
Right, right. So what about, he could have said a golden crown, your jeweled crown, but what is crystal?
Fragile.
It's fragile. It's also, oops,
Clear.
clear. Who said clear? Somebody said clear.
Yes, sir.
Right, okay. It's also clear, it's invisible, right? Crystal, technically glass. So think about that. Poets are being very deliberate, very intentional when they pick a word. They're not being random, right? They're thinking about, one of the things that reason why I love starting with poetry in this section, in this class, is because poets care about the individual word, right? The word has to have an impact. So crystal crown is that. It's clear, it's fragile, it's precious, it's clear, right? No one looks at the carpet of red gold, right? That you tread as you pass. What does the word tread mean? Anybody know what tread means?
A path. A path.
No, it means walk, right?
Yeah.
Nobody sees the
And they
path.
say tread lightly.
Right, walk lightly, right? So nobody sees the red carpet of red gold that you walk, right? That you tread as you pass. The non-existent carpet. Just in case at any point in this poem you're not sure that he's not talking about actual things, he tells you, right, up front, the non-existent carpet. The carpet doesn't exist. And then he says, and when you appear, you know, I think Mabel said this, all the rivers sound in my body, right? And Mabel was like, yeah, we have butterflies in our stomach sometimes. They're not literally butterflies in our stomach, right? It's a feeling. But what do you think, we say the rivers sound in my body. What rivers might we have in our body?
Sweat.
Blood, like
You make me
Blood.
sweat.
blood.
Yeah. The sweat will be outside the body.
I'll say
But definitely someone said blood, right? So the blood, right, that runs through our bodies are like these rivers that run through our body. And when you get excited, you feel that rush, right? You feel like the idea that the blood is rushing through you. So he says, when you appear, all the rivers sound in my body. Bells shake the sky. What kind of bells shake the sky?
Your heart.
Your heart. But in the world, what
What
kind
did
of
he
bells?
think?
Church
Like if it
bells.
rains?
Church.
I heard church bells,
Church.
right?
That's what.
Yeah, so somebody said church bells. So church bells, like normally the kind of bells that ring in squares that shake the sky are church bells, right? So just he uses the imagery of church, and then the next line he says a hymn fills the world. What is a hymn?
A song from church, usually.
It's a song, it's a religious song. So the level of love that this person is expressing is like religious almost, like sacred, right? The love is sacred. And he doesn't say that, but he infers it, right? By using the idea of bells shaking the sky and a hymn fills the world. And that hymn, that beautiful song, that beautiful religious song almost, he says, only you and I, my love, listen to it. Right? So what do you think that ending is?
That she
Only you.
feels the same, that is reciprocate.
There's mutual, right? There's
Mhm.
reciprocity, they reciprocate.
Mhm.
That's definitely inside of there, right? That it's something that they share together, right? It's their intimacy. It's between
Oh, I
two
feel like they
people.
probably like getting married.
That could be the hope, right? 'Cause that usually when you have church and love, that ends up in marriage, right? So that definitely is something that you could pull from this poem. So so what we just did, go ahead.
I was gonna say like it. Never mind, just no.
What happened?
Like I was putting like the whole poem together, like towards like in the beginning and then in the ending is like I chose you as like he's basically picking her as his queen,
Mhm,
like meaning wife or something.
mhm. Well, yeah, it could definitely that's there. So I'm going to speak a little bit more about this. So what we do is what we did is you with this poem you were able to get a lot of these ideas, right, from listening to me read it, right? Seeing it on the page, you get to see the repetition more, right? The way no one, no one, he has it there. Only you could see the repetition. I talked about line breaks, right? Because he goes, when you go through the streets, right, no one recognizes you. And sometimes poets will break a line, right? You're like, why don't you just leave it all on one line, right? They could, and it would still work. But and sometimes in breaking up the line, they're asking you to really think about the line and the phrase. Like when you go through the streets, no one recognizes you. The idea that no one recognizes you separates it, emphasizes it, right? Those kinds of things happen with line breaks, right? Um, so we've been talking about this great love, like a romantic love, right? Like a that. Do you think it could be other kinds of love?
Shakespeare. Yes.
Right? Could it be
Could
love
be.
for a daughter,
Yeah, that's what I was
Love
gonna
for a
say.
friend?
I was
love
thinking.
for a friend, right? Love for a mother.
Yes.
Mom, you are my queen. I've named you queen, right?
But it's
You know,
definitely a female.
well, okay, you could say that.
Well, I mean,
Right? There's some people that might be male and consider themselves queens, so
True
But
that.
the other thing that we often do too is that um, since we know it's Pablo Neruda, we always assume that the gender of the poet is the gender from the perspective, and that's like a fair assessment. But one thing that can keep in mind is it could be not, right? Could be, if it was like a mother talking to her daughter, right, or a daughter talking to her mother, it certainly can work that way. So it's okay to infer the gender, I think, onto the poet, to the perspective, but I want you to keep in mind that it could go beyond that, right? It could be beyond the gender of the poet. Okay.
That's a good thing that you're saying, because when I was writing my input of the poem, I was saying it as he,
Hmm.
sees her.
And it's okay because that you could infer that, but understanding that I think being able to take into what I'm saying, it helps you see the poem from different perspectives, right? It lets you see that it could be more than just what, and that's something I think poets want, that writers want in general. They want to be able to give you an idea, but they, I'll tell you, they love it when you have a bigger experience with the work. Let me take a look at the time. Yeah, sometimes yes, Erica.
I probably, you can hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, I probably went a little bit left from the beginning because I kind of put myself into the poem and kind of was thinking it was a shadow.
Mhm.
And then I named my shadow the purer, lovelier in the shape of the silhouette of the shadow. And so I continued reading the poem, but first thing that came to mind for me was a shadow. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I never thought that, but I imagine, like, what if you said this to yourself in the mirror?
It could be like a
right?
self-love. Yeah.
And
It
then
could
it
be a
was then
self-love.
when I read on, it said, when you go through the streets, no one recognizes you because no one looks at your shadow, but you looking at your shadow. So I just kind of put myself into the poem, and that's
Erica's breaking. You're just breaking up, but I think we got it. We got it. But yeah, it could be a self-love poem. Put yourself in it. I could see how that could work. But and that hasn't happened. I've been teaching this poem, I don't know, years, but that's what I love about it. That sometimes, in the process, it continues to learn and to grow. So, all right. So we still have 25 minutes of the class. Just so you all know, I wanted to do like 3 or 4 poems. I think we'll get to do one more today, because I think we just need to move at the pace we need to move. And then I want to talk about the next class, and I want to speak a little bit about the poetry packet, because I think it was Adama I heard her, and her feedback was pulling some things from the poetry packet. So I want to speak a little bit
Yes.
about that.
Yes, yeah.
Cool. So I'll read one more poem, and let me stop sharing my screen and figure out which one I will read. Oh yeah, okay.
Professor,
Yes,
I'm sorry. Where did you say Pablo Neruda was from?
Chile. He's Chilean. Okay, all right. So we're going to read one more poem today, and then I'll talk a little bit about the packet, the poetry, the 3 pages. We'll talk a little bit about poems, and then we'll talk about Wednesday, and we should be done for today. So the next poem that I'm going to read is a poem called, it's a poem by a woman named Kim Addonizio. She is American poet. She was born in Washington, D.C., as a matter of fact. She won lots of awards for the poetry that she does. She is often, if we want to take Pablo Neruda and if we want to give it a male perspective, she very often writes from a female perspective. And so that's something that she talks about in her work. Pablo Neruda is gone. He's no longer with us. He died. Kim Addonizio still is. She is probably, I think she's in her 60s. She's probably almost 70 years old. So that we're going to read a poem by her. And okay, so remember, I'm going to read it once. I'm going to pause briefly. I'll read it a second time. And then I want you to write down any reflections, that any thoughts, anything from it. Okay. So this poem is called First Poem for You by Kim Addonizio. I like to touch your tattoos in complete darkness when I can't see them. I'm sure of where they are, know by heart the neat lines of lightning pulsing just above your nipple, confined as if by instinct, blue swirls of water on your shoulder where a serpent twists facing a dragon. When I pull you to me, taking you until we're spent and quiet on the sheets, I love to kiss the pictures in your skin. They'll last until you're seared to ashes. Whatever persists or turns to pain between us, they will still be there. Such permanence is terrifying. So I touch them in the dark, but touch them Trying. That was one. I'll read it again. First poem for you by Kim Addonizio. I like to touch your tattoos in complete darkness when I can't see them. I'm sure of where they are, know by heart the neat lines of lightning pulsing just above your nipple, can find as if by instinct the blue swirls of water on your shoulder where a serpent twists facing a dragon. When I pull you to me, take you until we're spent and quiet on the sheets, I love to kiss the pictures in your skin. They'll last until you're seared to ashes. Whatever persists or turns to pain between us, they will still be there. Such permanence is terrifying. So I touch them in the dark, but touch them try. Okay. Take a few moments to write down any thoughts, reflections, observations.
It's poem. It sounds like he's talking about like a dream.
Right. So Nydia, you're going to write them down and then we're going to talk about them. Okay, finish your thoughts and then we'll talk a bit. Lydia, since you started speaking, do you want to kick us off?
Yes. The poem sounds like to me like if his dreaming is something that he can't physically have. So he's like imagining like touching that person or like where does that person has the tattoo. Maybe he or she's seeing that person, but they can't get close to that person. So the only way they could feel like they touching them is by dreaming of them or imagining.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I had a lot of questions about this poem in particular.
Mhm.
Like I was wondering why in the dark, and like, is it because like she is scared of that level of permanence? And then I was like, are the tattoos scary? Because she's talking about like a serpent and a dragon, but then she's admiring them. So I was like, okay, girl, you like it or you don't like it? And then like in the end, I was like, maybe she enjoys his company, but fears the permanence of what that relationship might lead to. And then she's like admiring those tattoos because it's like once you get a tattoo, that's forever. It doesn't. I mean, now you can take it off, but I feel like when people get tattoos, um, it's like this level of permanence. Like he's that confident that he doesn't fear things that are like forever, but she still has that fear. So she'll enjoy them in the dark, but when it comes to light, maybe it causes her some type of like anxiety or something or fear.
Mhm. Okay, great. I think Shaquana had her hand up, and then I saw a hand like Johnny. You changed your mind. Okay, so
No, I
Shaquana,
didn't
and then
change my mind, but I put it down.
Okay, Shaquana and then Cesar.
I think this poem comes from a perspective of someone that's adoring someone. It could be a friend, family member, anything of that, degree. Or it could come from a perspective of like self-esteem. Maybe this person's self-esteem was low and then he or she was trying to get the person to understand that they're beautiful just the way they are and that they kind of don't need to change something about themselves. So you could see it from a lot of different perspectives, depending on, but it mostly sounds like, the person is adoring the person's body and just pretty much trying to let them know that they don't have to change it to some degree.
Hmm. Cool. Cesar, and then Johnny, did you want to go or you? I didn't. I wasn't clear. Yes, you do. Okay, Cesar.
Oh, I put that she's probably laying down next to the person in the dark, and she's probably a tattoo artist, so she probably knows exactly where all the tattoos is at that she drew on him, and that and then I put that um she don't know whether she wants to commit, like she's terrified of committing to the person that she's talking about.
Johnny.
For me, the part, it's a little confusing, the point, because it also talks about ashes. And ashes, to me, in a poem, seems like that person one day is just going to vanish, no longer be there. So either it's a relationship, but she also admires him and loves the person because when you notice so many details about a person's body, the way she's describing it, she's very attentive to details. So that means love.
Mhm. Great. Anyone else wants to share something? I know in the chat, I think Johnny wrote he's a bad boy at one point.
Because of
And
the
then-
tattoos and
Right.
the type of tattoos that it mentions
Well,
that he has.
Oh, it's interesting. We could talk about there. I think there's at least one other poem about tattoos in the packet. We could talk about it. Maybe we'll read it next class. That might be an interesting thing to pair it to do that one with. But yeah, a lot of the ideas and themes and what you're pulling from it, right? Are there. So always, what you will do if you're writing an essay is you have to support whatever thought you have with the lines from the text or with the lines from the poem. And this poem, like the Neruda poem, you can tell there is something intimate, there's something dreamy about it, there's something that's almost like intangible, like you can't touch it, you can't grasp it, but yet there's a lot of sense of tactile. There's a lot about touch, right? Um, and so inside of it, there is some of you were pulling out a lot of the ideas, and some of the ideas of permanence, like something that is forever and something that doesn't last forever. The idea of, it says, when you will be seared to ashes is the line, Joanni, and seared to ashes is like, you will no longer exist, right? So both, there's lots of parallels between physical existence, right? And also love, right? When you fall in love, right? And if you haven't, it's gonna be great, trust me, right? But I'm assuming if you have, great, and if you haven't, and when you fall in love, you want it to last forever, right? And if you have had your heart broken, I tell you, sometimes love doesn't last forever with some people. Some people it does. Somebody's celebrating somebody told me their grandparents are celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary. I'm like, what? They've been together for 60 years, but there is this idea of permanence, right? And love, and how it could also vanish, and the fear that we feel that you could be so in love and then suddenly you're afraid that it's not going to exist anymore, right? So those are some of the themes that are happening inside of this poem. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm looking at the time. Right, and so here it is. So in your poetry packet, there's a little bit of a bio on Kim, so you could read it if you want to read a little bit more about her, and then and I'll read the poem, and so you could see it, right? So she writes, first poem for you. I like to touch your tattoos in complete darkness when I can't see them. I'm sure of where they are, right? So let me stop there. I like to touch your tattoos in complete, and then she goes, darkness when I can't see them, right? So when I read it to you the first time, I read it as one line. I like to touch your tattoos in complete darkness when I can't see them, right? Which also works, but she separates them. So we know that whoever is speaking, they are in a place where they are dark, and the person can touch those tattoos, but they can't see them. It's so dark, right? The next line, I'm sure of where they are, right? Know by heart the neat lines of lightning pulsing just above your nipple, right? I'm sure of where they are. That line, what do you think that means? If somebody says, I could be in the dark, but I know where your tattoo is.
Like that person know every part of the body. Like,
Yes, right? That's a person that they are definitely sharing an intimate, that person knows that other person's body. Then the next line, know by heart. Do you know that phrase? People know what that phrase means. I know this by heart.
It's by memory.
By memory, right? I know this by memory. When I say I know it, learn it by heart, learn it by memory. But it's interesting that she could say, I know this by memory, or I know this, but she said know by heart, right? She uses the word heart because it also means I know by heart, right? By your heart, by the love, by the emotion. She knows by heart the neat lines of lightning pulsing just above your nipple. Can find, as if by instinct, the blue swirls of water on your shoulder where a serpent twists facing a dragon. So there, what is Kim doing in the poem?
she's
What do you think?
describing the tattoo.
She
Like some
described-
imagery in there.
Yes, definitely imagery. She's giving us an image of so we know that over the nipple, there is a pulse of lightning, and that on the shoulder, there's a swirl of water where there's a serpent twisting to face a dragon, right? So there's a dragon and a serpent facing each other. I'm going to pause a little bit there. I'm going to move as slowly or quickly as I need to. I'm keeping track of our time too. So just talk to me about, like, what is a serpent?
Snake.
Is it a snake?
Yes,
Snake?
it's a snake. And what is a dragon?
A dragon?
Is it a dinosaur?
A dragon?
There's this
Fire?
funny, there's
It
this
could be
comedy,
fire.
right? It could be fire, right? But a serpent is technically a real animal, right? And a dragon is a mythical, right? So what's facing off to each other, reality and myth, right? So the reality of love and the myth of love, right? That could be what these two creatures symbolize. I'm giving you a little bit of shorthand with it because she could have picked any animals, right? Or no animals, but she chose those two. And if you sit down and you think about it, like why is the serpent twisting to face the dragon, right? And then as you think of the themes in the poem, right? And when we're thinking about love and the uncertainty and the permanence and the this that she's talking about, that it just helps us to see why she's using that kind of imagery, that idea. She's trying to help us see it. Then she goes to the next, continues, here, continues. She says, when I pull you to me, right? And so if you leave it alone, when I pull you, right? That's what she has on one line, to me, on the next, not even the next line, but the next stanza, right? The next paragraph in poetry is called stanzas. When I pull you to me, taking you until we're spent. What do you think that means? Taking you until we're spent.
And to finish of describing.
Wait, who's speaking? Mayelin?
I mean, yeah. I mean, until the person finished the descriptions of the tattoos or whatever they're describing.
Okay, you're not quite there. You're kind of close. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think tired means spent, like like tired. You're
Mhm.
spent. You have no more energy, depleted.
Right.
It was a long
definitely
night.
that. Why are they spent?
Because she
were
was
being
taking
physical.
them. Yeah.
They were being
Yes.
physical.
They were having sex. Okay.
I wanted to be
Yes, I
have a
know.
little filter.
Yes, it's okay. We could have filters, but we could also take them off right now.
No, but
to get to
there
the
I
point.
see kids, so I don't want to say something
Oh,
out
it's
of line.
okay. It's all right. So spent is that. Spent is a term that means you've had an orgasm. That's another way for the word spent. So when she says, when I pull you to me, so what kind of, if let's say she's a woman, what kind of woman is she if she's pulling somebody to her? She's a little
Dominant.
wallflower. Yes, she's
Dominant.
strong. She goes, after we're done, when I pull
It's
you to me,
aggressive.
yeah, and
Strong woman.
taking you until we're spent and quiet on the sheets, right? When they finish, she goes, I love to kiss the pictures on your skin, right? She's giving us more imagery of what she's doing, right? In the dark, she knows what they are, right? And then she says, they'll last until you're seared to ashes, right? So those tattoos are going to last until, being seared to ashes could mean what?
Tire.
Dead,
Can't-
cremated.
Dead, cremated, right? That if they burn you, that's when you're done, that's when those tattoos will be gone, right? So they're gonna last. Those tattoos, they're gonna be with you until you die. And then she goes, whatever persists but turns to pain between us, like whatever happens, continues, or happens to turn to pain between us, those tattoos are still gonna be there, right? They're gonna be there regardless of what happens with us.
So
And then she
that
goes,
means, you know,
"Go
how
ahead."
sometimes couples, they decide to get a tattoo that means something. So probably that's where that comes from between their relationship.
Yeah, and when if the relationship turns to pain, what's going to happen?
He'll remember her because those
Those
tattoos will still
tattoos
be
are going to
there.
be there, right? Right? They'll be there. And then she says, such permanence is terrifying, right? Such permanence. So in a way, I think Cesar or somebody was talking about that. There is that, like she loves it, but then there's something scary about that permanence, like that foreverness, right? Like I'll talk about that in a minute. So she says, so I touched them in the dark, but touched them trying. What do you think? That's a strange ending, right? So I touched them in the dark, but touched them trying. What do you think she's trying?
She knows that there's something that can happen in that relationship. So she's there, but she's trying. And she tries to forget about the bad part and not listen to that little devil talking to her in her head. That's not good for you, but she's trying.
I took it as
Okay.
maybe she's trying to overcome her fear of permanence and become a little bit more comfortable with this partner that she has.
Mhm. Why would you think that?
I mean, because she is dominant, but
Mhm.
she continues to reference negative aspects of permanence, like, you
Mhm.
know, like I feel like when she talks about like, oh, the tattoos are there until you're dead. I mean, some people are married till they die, right?
Mhm. Right.
So, and she just, she just doesn't, permanence doesn't seem something like she embraces. I think that she's taking in the moment, and that's why she focuses on those details in his body, kissing him or her, right? So that's my thing. Like, I feel like she's not so confident in the future of the relationship. Because,
Yeah.
for example, in the other poem, he's like, it's just us. We taking on the world, baby, no fuimo, but she's
Mhm.
not, this is not the energy I'm getting from her.
Yeah.
It's like
Like,
she knows it's gonna end.
There's fear in there. There's fear from her that she feels that there's something that it's not everlasting.
Yes, that's right.
Angela, were you gonna say something? No.
No, I said that is true. That is a lot of fear. She's not
Mhm.
completely secure that that relationship is gonna last forever.
Yeah. So what you're all identifying is her conflict. She's conflicted, right? On the one hand, she wants him and she loves the tattoos. On the other hand, she's wondering, that permanence is terrifying. Like how, what do I have to, what might I have to deal with to stay with you forever, right?
It's like she
And-
enjoyed the moment, but she knows it's gonna come to an end. Like she
right.
knows it's
That
gonna
it could,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
That it very much could. But there's also this, if you think of the activity of the poem, she's touching, she's connecting, she's kissing the poem. What symbolizes permanence, the tattoo, she's trying to connect to it, right? In a physical way, right? So there's all this stuff happening inside of this poem. There's more with this poem. This poem is also considered a sonnet. So when we start talking about the forms of it, you will see it, see how it works with the sonnet, there's rhyming, even though when you read it, you don't, like, you see complete, me, sure of, above, right? Blue, you, right? So she's following, there's different things happening in this poem. But so I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. And so I had asked you to read pages 1 to 3, and basically pages 1 to 3 of it, of the piece of the elements of poetry, begins talking about like the definition. And we've kind of talked about those definitions as I'm talking about these poems. They talk about different types of poems, like the lyric poem, a narrative poem, right? And so most of the poems we're going to be working with are lyric poems inside of this class. A narrative is a story. So sometimes a poem could tell a story, right? And it doesn't necessarily always do, but there are poems that tell a story. They're narrative poems. There's also poems that are dramatic poems it talks about, and those are very often used in a play as a dramatic monologue or soliloquy, and inside of poems. But we have 2 minutes left in class. So I want to just commend you on, believe it or not, the work we did. That was good work. And the activity that we were doing today, I call unlocking a poem. Because some poems, like Pablo Neruda's poem, might be a little more, I'm going to say straightforward. Like when you're reading it, you can kind of get it. And then Kim's poem took a little bit of work, right? You did a great job because you were able to identify a lot of things. And then when you go through the poem slowly, line by line, section by section, you begin to unlock more of the meaning of the poems, right? And that's the beautiful thing about being in class together, is that whether we're in a group, whether we're having a discussion, hopefully those of you who didn't get a chance to speak today or didn't speak, were able to listen and hear your classmates and say, oh yeah, I heard that in the poem. Oh yeah, I understood that in the poem. Or maybe I didn't see that in the poem, but now that that person mentioned it, it makes sense to me. I get it, right? Or so, and sometimes just in the exchange of what we've been doing together, new things come up, right? So, so I want to encourage you to definitely participate and listen to each other and to do the work. So for next class, I'm going to ask you to definitely, upload your comments to Blackboard. There's a spot on there to do it. Next class, what we'll do is, if you could read a little more, read until page 9 in the elements of poetry, and next class we'll begin going through those first 9 pages to talk about it. Some of the things they will talk about are how the senses are used, and I want you to think about these poems when we think about the senses, like I talked about with the 5 senses: smell, touch, taste, hearing, that kind of sound. That the poets are using that. And so Kim is doing that. You said, when one of you said imagery, so she's trying to create an image. Imagery is not only visual, it's also audio and different ways using the other senses. But also she was using touch a lot in her poem. I touched them, I traced them, I kissed them, right? The idea of she's trying to create this sense of touch inside of the poems. So all you have to do is upload your comments from today onto Blackboard, and then read the next, whatever, pages 4 to 9, or 1 to 9. If you didn't read 1 to 3, you can catch up if you're just joining the class. And then I'll see you all on Wednesday. All right, I'll pause if there's any questions. I'll stay here and answer questions. Okay. But again, always, if you're done, you could sign off and say good night. All right, Erica.
You want us to write our reflections in the discussion board?
Yes, you'll see there's in the discussion, this says today's date, 8:30, and this is reflections or something. And so just put them there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. So I was just checking to see if my attendance was marked today, because I had trouble entering the class at the beginning. So I was probably like 5 minutes late.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I tried to send a note 10 minutes before class, just in case because people are still registering for the class, and I sent the wrong link. So that was part of the problem for some people. While you were all writing your first reflection, I sent another link out with the right one, just in case somebody was, wandering and like, what the hell's going on? So I sent another link out. But the link that should be the same link. It's on the syllabus. That's the same link for the whole semester.
Okay.
Okay. All right. If there are no more
I just wanted
questions.
to share something because in the pages 1 through 3 handout,
Mhm,
they made a reference to one of Edgar Allan Poe's poems. And I
mhm.
was really excited when I went back to work this week because I work at a middle school. We got actually a graphic of like a graphic novel book of all of Edgar Allan Poe's
Oh,
stories.
wow.
So I was really excited because when I was younger and I read those stories, I had my own picture. So now
Mhm.
to see the images in a book, I mean, I'm pretty sure, you know, obviously it wasn't him that made these pictures, but it was just really exciting. And I wanted to share that with them. I was like, oh my goodness. Hopefully my
That's great.
students will be just as excited, but we'll see how that goes.
Definitely next time, if you remember, share in the chat the title of the book and all that, so we could.
Oh,
take
yes,
them.
yes, yes. I'll send you a email with the title and like a little picture of the cover. I was very excited.
Oh, that's great. Thanks.
Hi, Mr. Gordon. I'm
Madame?
sorry. The reflection for today is gonna be on both poem.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right. That's it. And have a
Bye.
great evening, and I'll see you all on Wednesday.
You too. Thank you.
Okay,
Right.
Professor, you too. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.